So what's the greatest immediate threat to the American public? Is it ISIS or is it heroin from Mexican drug cartels? Some people would think, well, it's got to be ISIS because those are the most violent Islamic extremists who are running around the Middle East and elsewhere, chopping off heads of opponents or setting off car bombs or conducting terrorist attacks in cities like Paris. But really for the United States, for the average American, the greatest threat immediately to them and their families is heroin from Mexican drug cartels. The incidence of opiate addiction and overdose and death has skyrocketed in the last 8 to 10 years. So much so that even in the last 2 to 3 years, you've seen a jump in overdose deaths of between 12,000 and 18,000 people a year. So if we think about 9/11, where 3,000 people died, we have a multiple of 4, perhaps 5, even 6 times as many people dying every year as a direct result of the activities of Mexican drug cartels. And that should frame things for people. It's not just, well, that's the kind of stuff that happens in the city, or that's what happens down along the border. This is in every community in this country, every zip code, regardless of race, creed, color, ethnic origin, level of education, Yale to jail, it doesn't matter. These are people who become addicted and eventually overdose who are from, nice families. It's not something that, is a byproduct of broken homes. It's a question of addiction, and there's a disease model that talks about that. But what's feeding that addiction is heroin that starts out in the poppy fields of the southwest corner of the Mexican state of Chihuahua, which is run principally by the Sinaloa cartel. And those drugs come across our border into the United States at a massive rate and scale. And the only reason they get across that border is because of corruption in law enforcement. And it happens at the municipal level, the state level, and the federal level. A lot of people don't want to hear that. That's an unpleasant fact for them, because what I'm alleging, and I can back this up through my own investigative work and through my sources, is that there is such a high degree of corruption in law enforcement and among politicians and other public officials that this war on drugs that we're fighting is really against ourselves. So what are some of the lessons or some of the things to think about when it comes to this? The Mexican cartels run a very sophisticated business model, so sophisticated that they have brought into Mexico people from Southwest Asia. Principally, we're talking about Afghanistan, Pakistan, but also including Iran and even Iraq. And in those instances, those people from Southwest Asia bring with them an agricultural technical skill to increase both the quantity and quality of poppy production. And the second half of that should really concern and scare people, because the second half is they bring military training. Those same Southwest Asians entering Mexico are training cartel armies. And the great, I think, single example of that comes from May of 2015, when the Wall Street Journal reported that foreign fighters, that's all they described them as, foreign fighters, were training the Jalisco New Generation Cartel on how to shoot down Mexican Army helicopters. And they've done so successfully. And so who are those folks who know how to use RPGs to knock down, in this case, Huey helicopters? They're folks out of Afghanistan and Pakistan and elsewhere. And they are together working with the cartel to train an armed force that's the enforcement arm of the cartel, but on the production side, making the poppy production larger, more powerful, more productive, more profitable. And they're moving that across our southern border. None of this is news to people in law enforcement or the intelligence world, the armed forces, even the diplomatic community. None of what I'm saying is news. They all know this. They know it in the form of the El Paso Intelligence Center, or EPIC, in the far western corner of Texas, right up against New Mexico. The folks at EPIC, it's like a big fusion center. All the intelligence agencies are there. And all this drug trafficking goes on right under their nose, literally. El Paso has been a smuggling city for a couple of hundred years. It's literally El Paso del Norte, the way north, the passage north. And El Paso is a place where literally tractor-trailer loads of heroin enter the United States. And their distribution network is frighteningly effective. One law enforcement source of mine said, hey, Chris, does Walmart ever run out of milk? And of course the answer is no. And he says, well, drugs are the same way. The distribution network out of Mexico for heroin into the United States and into every community, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in New Hampshire, whether you're in Akron, Ohio, whether you're in Idaho or Los Angeles, if you're looking for an opiate or an opioid, whether it's the drug itself from a doctor that's being abused, or whether it's heroin, cooked in a spoon and shot in a vein, the way that it happens is principally leveraged by corrupt public officials. That's the dirty little secret. That is what people don't want to hear. The stories of the cartels and their violence are true and accurate. But the other half of the equation, how do those trucks get across the country? How do they make those deliveries? Is because you have officials turning a blind eye or actively participating and cooperating with them. And I have eyewitness testimony in a years-long investigation. I've brought this information up to the Senate, to Chairman Grassley. I've spoken with the Inspector General at the Justice Department. I've provided the Inspector General of the Justice Department with law enforcement officers who have given them sworn testimony about this. They know, yet it continues. So when you step back from all of this and you say, well, what's the solution? What do we do? I think we need public education about what addiction is really all about, that it happens anywhere and everywhere to all sorts of people. But when it comes to the root cause, you need to look at corruption and criminality at the municipal, state, and federal level. Mr. Trump and Attorney General Sessions need to really clean house in a way that some people would think is almost unimaginable. There are people who need to get fired. And I know names of people that need to be fired. And then a second question, this is a much larger policy question, but if we're willing to accept 12, 14, 16,000 dead Americans at the hands of Mexican drug cartels, at what point do we make the decision to declare them foreign terrorist organizations? So what's the greater threat to the United States on a day-to-day basis? Is it ISIS terrorists, or is it Mexican drug cartels running heroin across the border? I argue it's the second. It's the Mexican drug cartels. They threaten more American lives on a daily basis right now than any other foreign terrorist threat.